This is the Parliament of India, the central legislative organ of the union government. It's a tripartite structure of the president and two legislative houses. To understand how this institution actually operates, you have to look past the political rhetoric. The Constitution functions as a rigid systems engineering schematic, precisely calibrated to control and limit the power of the state. The foundation of this schematic rests on three structural pillars: the President of India, the Rajya Sabha, and the Lok Sabha. Originally known by their English names, the Council of States and House of the People officially adopted the Hindi nomenclature, Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, in 1954. The Lok Sabha is the House of the People. Its members are directly elected by citizens through universal adult franchise, and the chamber is entirely dissolved and reconstituted every 5 years. The Rajya Sabha, conversely, is the Council of States. It is a permanent, continuing chamber representing the states and union territories, and it is never subject to dissolution. The schematic builds a severe numerical disparity into this structure. The Lok Sabha operates with a maximum strength of 552 members, heavily outnumbering the Rajya Sabha ceiling of exactly 250. Drafting laws is only a fraction of their mandate. The legislature's core design is to serve as the center of all democratic political processes, forcing elected representatives to answer for their actions in real time. To achieve this daily accountability without paralyzing the entire state apparatus, the Constitution engineers a calculated asymmetry in power between the two houses. On certain legislative matters, the houses share equal status. The passage of ordinary bills and constitutional amendments require the consent of both chambers. The Rajya Sabha also holds exclusive federal powers. Under Article 249, only the Rajya Sabha can authorize the national parliament to make laws on subjects typically reserved for state governments. But that federal check is countered by Article 75, dictating an absolute rule. The Council of Ministers is collectively responsible only to the Lok Sabha. This responsibility means the executive government survives only as long as it commands a mathematical majority on the floor of the lower house. To enforce this daily survival imperative, the Lok Sabha utilizes one primary mechanism: absolute control over the nation's finances. Even the president, who holds the authority to summon and dissolve the Lok Sabha and sign every bill into law, is excluded from sitting as a member in either house. The system is perfectly partitioned. The Rajya Sabha defends federal boundaries, but the Lok Sabha holds the sole financial kill switch required for the executive government's daily operation. The financial architecture is built on a single, uncompromising rule: no tax can be levied and no money can be spent without the explicit authority of law. This table breaks down the three constitutional funds managing India's money. The primary reservoir is the Consolidated Fund of India, established under Article 266, which absorbs all taxes, revenues, and loans raised by the government. The withdrawal criteria for this fund are absolute. Parliamentary authorization is required prior to a single rupee being spent by the executive branch. Next is the Contingency Fund of India, defined by Article 267. This is a strictly limited emergency reserve placed at the disposal of the president to cover unforeseen expenditure, pending formal parliamentary approval. Finally, the public account handles all other public money. This covers scenarios where the government acts merely as a banker, meaning parliamentary authorization is not required for disbursements. Because the public account deals with banking transactions like provident fund deposits and judicial remittances, it is operated entirely by executive action. By legally routing all actual operating capital into the consolidated fund, the Constitution creates a legislative choke point that the executive branch cannot bypass. When the executive needs to adjust taxes, borrow money, or access the consolidated fund, the legislation triggers Article 110 of the Constitution. This classifies the legislation as a money bill. Looking at this legislative routing chart, money bills bypass standard procedures entirely. They can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha, and they require prior recommendation from the president to even reach the floor. Once passed by the lower house, the Rajya Sabha is completely stripped of its veto power. They cannot amend a money bill, and they cannot reject it. Reading further down the chart, the upper house is limited to a maximum delay of 14 days. If they fail to return the bill to the Lok Sabha within that window, It is legally deemed passed in its original form.
Pacing quickens slightly, because this designation completely alters the balance of power. The Speaker of the Lok Sabha serves as the absolute final authority on whether a bill meets the strict criteria for Article 110 certification. We can contrast money bills with standard public bills on this matrix. Public bills reflect general government policy, require a 7-day notice, and are introduced by ministers, subject to equal scrutiny from both houses. Similarly, financial bills Type 1 and 2 contain financial elements, but don't meet the strict Article 110 criteria. For these, the Rajya Sabha regains its full power to amend the legislation, or even trigger a joint sitting of both houses under Article 108 to resolve a deadlock. Article 110 exists for one precise reason: to ensure that political deadlocks between the federal states and the central government cannot paralyze the essential financial operations of the state. The most visible execution of this financial control is the annual financial statement, outlined in Article 112, which acts as the primary mechanism for releasing government funds. The budget is split into two categories: charged expenditure, which covers fixed obligations like the salaries of Supreme Court judges and the President, can be discussed by Parliament, but it cannot be voted on. All other government spending is classified as votable. The executive must present these requests to the Lok Sabha as demands for grants. Voting to approve or deny these grants is the exclusive privilege of the lower house. During this process, members of the Lok Sabha can attempt to slash a ministry's requested budget using 3 specific procedural tools, known as cut motions. A policy cut motion seeks to reduce a specific grant demand to exactly 1 single rupee. Passing this signifies the legislature's complete and absolute disapproval of the policy driving that expenditure. Alternatively, an economy cut motion dictates a specific mathematical reduction in the budget to force efficiency, while a token cut motion reduces a demand by exactly 100 rupees to officially log a specific grievance onto the parliamentary record. The budget vote is not a formality. It is the mandatory yearly renewal of the executive branch's mandate to command the public purse. Releasing the funds is only half the architecture. Parliament lacks the time and technical bandwidth to audit the sprawling administrative state on the floor, so it delegates post-expenditure scrutiny to specialized standing committees. The Estimates Committee operates with 30 members drawn entirely from the Lok Sabha. It functions as a continuous economy committee, examining the estimates to force administrative efficiency throughout the financial year. Following the money further brings in the Public Accounts Committee, or PAC. It holds 22 members across both houses, and by strict parliamentary convention since 1967, its chairman is always selected from the political opposition. The PAC executes the postmortem. It scrutinizes the finance accounts of the Union government, meticulously checking actual spending against what was originally authorized. During these audits, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India steps in to assist the committee, acting formally as a guide, friend, and philosopher to the PAC. A third body, the Committee on Public Undertakings, applies this same rigorous examination to the accounts of state corporations, ensuring public money is managed according to sound business principles. These committees ensure that the Lok Sabha's budget authorization is never a blank check. It is a binding contract, subject to relentless, non-partisan audit. The mechanical loop of the Indian state is tight. The Lok Sabha authorizes the budget, the executive spends the capital, the Auditor General tracks the receipts, and the committees drag the findings back to the parliamentary floor for debate. If the executive fails to maintain its grip on this machinery, if a money bill is defeated on the floor, or if the president's inaugural motion of thanks fails to pass, the government is immediately terminated. They must resign. The Lok Sabha can bypass the budget entirely and trigger this collapse manually by passing a no-confidence motion, terminating the ministry's mandate without requiring any specific grounds or justification. Even in moments of extreme crisis, the lower house retains the exclusive authority to pass a resolution forcing the discontinuance of a national emergency, stripping emergency powers away from the executive branch. The executive wields the immense physical power of the state. But the legislature holds the tether, securely fastened around the nation's purse. In the Indian constitutional schematic, the authority to spend money and the right to govern are not separate concepts. Financial control and executive survival are mathematically and inextricably linked.